What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome back to... not Let's Play the NCPL. Sorry guys, I'm tired and sick and out of it, but welcome back to the NCPL Season 4. This is going to be Week 5. We are going up against attack coach of the Ottawa Silvally. I am all over the place. Yes, I'm sick again. It's becoming a thing. I haven't gone a month without an infection or a cold or something like that. But regardless, time's a little short on my end, so let's hop into his team. First off, he's got his mega pick, Mega Diancie, definitely a threat both physically, offensively, and specially offensively. Definitely a threat with access to great coverage options in Moonblast, Diamond Storm. I think it's Power Gem now too, if it wants to run fully special. It's also got Earth Power and of course Hidden Power. It can also run sub Endeavor sets and other interesting stuff like that. It can be a Stealth Rocker. It's got Magic Bounce, which makes setting up hazards a little bit more difficult. And like I said, just the kind of unpredictability of whether or not you're going to be hit by a Diamond Storm or a Moonblast, and both of them hitting hard makes it a really difficult mon to deal with. Next up, he's got his defensive core, I would say, Melodic and Tangrowth, both of which are really bulky, one more physically bulky than the other, one more special. Tangrowth, of course, with Regenerator. If you've seen my, I think it was the NCPL Season 3. Yeah, NCPL Season 3 league, you know how Tangrowth can be incredibly helpful in building a sort of bulky, defensive core, acting as a pivot, setting up Leech Seed potentially. It's got great coverage options too. Melodic, can toxic things, haze things. If status effect, if it's like poisoned or burnt or something like that, and it's running Marvel Scale, its defense actually boosts by 50%, making it that much more difficult to kill, especially with both these mons having reliable recovery, both in their moves and one of them in their abilities. Definitely a difficult core to take down. Mew, of course. How do you deal with Mew? You never really do. You just kind of wing it in the middle of the battle. You maybe anticipate what kind of a Mew he could bring based on which team he brings and what it's potentially missing, and assume that Mew will always just fill the gaps, but really you can't really prepare for Mew. You just kind of have to play well on the spot. So you can run bulky, defensive. He's run Aurora Veil Mew in anticipation of Hail coming from a team, so that's... You just never really know. And with Tax team building creativity, it just makes it that much more difficult. Mamswine definitely hits hard. Base 130 attack. Shout out to It's Gator, the out of it life form. Mamswine hits really hard on the physical side. It's got priority in Ice Shard. It can also be a Stealth Rocker, adding to his repertoire of Stealth Rockers and Hazard Setters. And speaking of which, we got Donphan, which is also a hazard removal mon. In Rapid Spin, he's got potential Mew with Defog and potential Donphan with Rapid Spin. In addition to Magic Bounce and Mega Diancie, he's very clearly got some good hazard control in addition to hazard setting on his team. Donphan in and of itself is also a bit of a threat. It's got a base 120 attack, which is not something you can really afford to sleep on. So, yeah. Buzzwole. Buzzwole is strong. It tanks hits, physical hits that is, really well, and with access to the beast, boost. Sounds so awkward when I'm sick. He can boost that defense or that attack stat, with access to stuff like Lunge or Leech Life or Ice Punch, Earthquake, Thunder Punch, Focus Punch, Superpower. It's got a great move pool, and it can hit a lot of my mons hard. It can run sub Focus Punch, sub Seed, sub Bulk Up, Focus Punch. It's definitely got some serious 4 move slot syndrome this week, but I'm gonna have to test it out and see what's going on with it. Next up would be Rotom Heat. I also realized you guys might not be able to see things. Let's bring this over here. Hopefully you guys can see the mons now. Rotom Heat is an interesting mon. I don't find it too threatening. Against my particular team, its coverage, if it's running HP Ice, is really good, but stat-wise and such, it's not too incredible. That said, it only has, I think, 2 weaknesses in Rock and Water. Very similar to Rotom. It's good for the same reasons Rotom Wash is good. It's a defogger, it can Will-O-Wisp, it's got, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt. It just doesn't have as great typing as something like Rotom Wash. Next up would be Goodra. Goodra is always a tough mon to prep for because of its incredible move pool, whether both physical, special, and it's also a great natural bulk. Let's see if I can show you guys these stats. Yeah, it's got great SPDF. You can run AV, you can run modest specs, and really because of its solid HP, solid defense, solid SPDF, it's living a lot of hits and doing quite a bit of damage. Base 100 attack, base 110 special attack, and with the ability to invest in it because of its natural bulk, it can definitely put in work. Gengar, his Z secondary mon. Definitely a scary mon. It's a great speed tier and has a solid base 130 special attack stat. Ghost spam is really difficult to deal with, so yeah, it's just got great stab, ghost type attacks, and with access to maybe something like Giggable Havoc or even Shattered Psyche, or Twinkle Tackle, or Neverending Nightmare. It's got a lot of options available. Crawdaunt hits really hard on the physical side. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's got adaptability, so its stab bonus is ×2 instead of ×1.5. It's got Aqua Jet, and it really thrives under Trick Room, which I don't really foresee coming, but I feel like he might bring Crawdaunt as an anti-Trick Room counter. So, really hard-hitting knockoff, too. Next up is Porygon Z. Definitely something to worry about. He doesn't have access to the Omni boosting conversion. That's why it's not his Zmon, I'd imagine. He still has the ability to use adaptability or download or analytic, all of which are particularly helpful. Probably analytic the least, but so I'd expect adaptability. Stab Tri-Attack off of base 135 special attack stat is really strong, especially with that adaptability boost. Next up is Terrakion. It hits a really neat speed tier and has great offensive stab typing in close combat and Stone Edge. Of course, obvious Stone Edge, accuracy fault, but it can also be a lead rocker. It can rock polish, it can SD. It's definitely a strong mon. And lastly, Metagross is really bulky, really offensive mon. It's got great overall stats and a solid typing and great move pool as well to take advantage of its different stats. So he's definitely got a good team. It definitely fits with my sort of play style with like bulky offense, balance, having mons that can dish out good damage but also tank hits pretty well, having a really solid defensive backbone, but also having some mons that can really just smack the other team hard if you want to. So definitely a really difficult team to prep for, in my opinion. But nevertheless, I did, and here is that team. The first mon is going to be Scizor, shocker. I'm running Bullet Punch, U-Turn, SD, and Roost, and physically defensive Mega Scizor. I've got enough speed to outspeed Melodic if it's min speed, or has like minimal speed investment. And the rationale there is I don't need all of this defense to be effective against the offensive threats I'm trying to check, which are mainly Mamoswine, Donphan, potentially Buzzwole, potentially Tangrowth, and potentially Terrakion, even though I don't take Terrakion too well. And maybe Crawdaunt, depending on whether he goes for Crabhammer or Knockoff. And I'm not going to have all of my physically defensive pressure on Scizor, but it is really helpful in that it has that versatility. It can take on some of those mons. It threatens some of them out with Bullet Punch. It threatens some of them out with U-Turn, gaining me momentum. And I have reliable recovery in Roost. So yeah, that's kind of the role Scizor's playing here. Bullet Punch is pretty good against this team. U-Turn, I want to be able to go first against Melodic. I want to be able to outspeed it and get a little bit of chip off with U-Turn before taking a potential Scald and risking a burn. So that's why the speed is there. And yeah, that pretty much covers Mega Scizor. Next up is going to be Greninja. We've got an Expert Belt Torrent Greninja. I want to be able to bluff Scarf if necessary, and I didn't want to take Life Orb damage when he has a couple mons that with really strong Ice Shards or potential Hazard setting. I just didn't want to be taking that extra chip given that there might be a lot of switching in this particular match. But outside of that, it's pretty straightforward. Enough speed to outspeed his speediest threats, basically Gengar. And the rest goes into special attack, and what isn't in whatever's left over went to HP. And the moves themselves, Surf, Dark Pulse, Dual Stab, they actually do really well against this team if you look around. And then of course what isn't hit by either of those gets hit really hard by Ice Beam. And then U-Turn for momentum also helps bluff the Scarf or the Specs or something like that. And will help pick up momentum with my other mons. This is going to be a very defensive team, as you'll see. This is the extent of my offense, really. Next up is Toxapex, and we are running a mixed Toxapex with a lot of defense and a lot of SPDEF as well, max HP, very typical set, Skull, Toxic, T-Spikes, and Recover, which is turning out to probably be my favorite set. Black Sludge, Regenerator. This thing, I really enjoy using Pex because it's a solid pivot. I can tank a hit and then heal up, as I switch out into something that's maybe more apt to deal with the threat based on what it went for, or something like that. I can use this to scout. Scald is great for Scald burns on the obvious threats like Buzzwole, Donphan, Mamoswine. I think my Scald actually breaks a Buzzwole sub, which is important. And Toxic. Toxic is really important this match on anything, because it's going to be a lot of chipping away at his team bit by bit, and a lot of that has to do with his defensive backbone of Melodic and Tangrowth and Mew, which I very much expect him to bring this time around. He might bring Metagross in particular for Toxapex, but then if he does, I potentially get up a T-Spike, or he risks getting his Metagross burnt, in which case then I deal with it 1v1. So yeah, the Spadef is there to take on Specs Gengar. I believe I'm not 2-hit KO'd by Specs Gengar's Shadow Ball if he's timid, and I think that's even after Rocks, so from full. So that's there to help out with that. And yeah, the next mon is going to be Porygon 2, which is mostly Spadef. It's got still a decent bit of defense, and a lot of that's to help out with potential Focus Blast from Specs Gengar, otherwise I take it on really well. And something you'll notice is with my team thus far, between Thunderbolts, between Fighting type moves, between Psychic type moves, they're going to be really hard pressed given I have immunities or really strong resistances to each of those typings. So if there is a time where, you know, a mon is toxic, or if it's Life Orb, and it's just chilling, trying to go for attacks over and over, but my mons are taking them really well, able to recover, as his mons are just getting whittled away bit by bit. Because when you look at his team, outside of his really solid defensive bulky core, you know, Tangrowth, Melodic, Mew, none of his mons have recovery. I mean, Buzzwole maybe in Leech Life, but outside of that, they don't have recovery. So it's going to be easy to chip away at the rest of his team. And yeah, Spadef mostly for Gengar and his special attacking threats, potentially Mega Diancie, potentially Rotopi, potentially Goodra. Yeah, that's the ideal, or that's the deal here. Thunderbolt to hit Melodic. I'm analytic because I plan on going after every single mon, and when I was looking at his mon's Spadef and defense stats, I determined that more often than not I would be getting attack boosts against the mons I would want special attack boosts against. So it didn't really make sense to run download, and he didn't really have too many mons that I thought were worthy of, you know, tracing their ability. So analytic it'll help out with doing a little bit of extra damage against mons that are faster than me, or if he switches out. And yeah, T-Bolt, Tri-Attack, both of those are going to be, you know, solid damaging attacks against a lot of his mons. Protect is there to potentially rack up some toxic damage on his mons, or to see what he wants to do if he is Specs. And Recover is there for reliable recovery. Pretty straightforward. The defense investment, I believe, is for Mamoswine. I believe it's for Mamoswine. Or Superpower from Banded Goodra, I think. So, yeah, next up is going to be Bronzong, which is running a lot of Spadef and some HP and defense. We're running Gyro Ball, Toxic, Stealth Rock, and Protect. Again, Protect is to get a little bit of HP back and to scout for what he wants to do, potentially rack up toxic damage on him. Stealth Rock is there for obvious reasons. Toxic is there for obvious reasons. And Gyro Ball is there to get some damage off on some of his other mons. Now, you'll notice that there are certain mons like Buzzwole that could come in, and if I don't have T-Spikes up, that thing can be really scary. So I definitely need to play around that, and I think that's going to be one of my difficulties going into this match, particularly dealing with Buzzwole. And I can't let that thing sub up, that's for sure. But yeah, I was considering running Future Sight on this. Admittedly, I'm thinking about it now. The thing is, I do want the longevity that comes with Protect, and being able to, you know, get a little bit of HP back helps me out with Terrakion in particular. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it with the little time I have. And something else worth noting is this is a ground immunity. So again, playing around with all these different immunities and weaknesses I have on my team, forcing him to have to predict and pretty much call 50-50, right? He can go for EQ against my Toxapex, or he can go for something like Knockoff, and you know, he might get Skull Burnt if he goes for Knockoff on my Pex, and he lets my Bronzong come in and set up rocks if he goes for EQ, or afterwards if he goes for Knockoff, I can go into Mega Scizor, and then I don't worry about taking a Life Orb Earthquake with my Mega Scizor, and then easily scare it out with Bullet Punch. So there's a lot going on there. And then lastly is Mimikyu, Life Orb Disguise, Shadow Sneak, Shadow Claw, Play Rough, SD. Pretty straightforward, jolly set, max attack, near max HP, basically just to outspeed what's relevant at that speed tier, and the rest goes into HP to get a Life Orb number, and then what doesn't go into that goes into defense, because I anticipate potentially taking an Ice Shard. And looking at his team, Mimikyu actually does really well. It hits a lot of things neutrally, and it covers gaps pretty well. It hits Buzzwole super effectively, it hits Mew super effectively, it hits Metagross super effectively, it hits Terrakion super effectively, and it hits Crawdon super effectively, and it helps out with the speed weakness to Gengar. So that's kind of the idea there. It's also a normal immunity and a fighting type immunity, which is really helpful against Buzzwole, Terrakion, and Porygon Z. So again, this week, we're really forcing our opponent, like we have in the other weeks, to really be pressed, right? To choose which move it is, and then based on all the different immunities I have on my team, basically pick, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 shot of getting it right. And if I have toxic spikes up or toxic, or if I force a switch, every single time they get it wrong, they're taking a little bit of extra damage. And I can even exacerbate that further with the protect on my mons, or going for recover, and minimizing the amount of like chip that I'm actually taking from the attacks that they do manage to land. So that's the team this week. Again, it is very bulky. Honestly, I didn't think I had enough offensive potential to outpower his own like bulky backbone while maintaining my own. So I kind of decided to try and outbulk him this week, and we'll see how it goes. Tak is a good battler. He's not doing super well at the moment record-wise, but he is a good battler, and he's a really creative team builder, which is definitely the scariest part. So should be a good one. I hope you guys are looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys in the battle. But until then, this is Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.